From up in the clouds, it's your good friend Whimsy Rainbow Star, and these are the Bayonetta 2 guns. Basing these off of my remake of Scarborough Fair, I start with shiny metallic gold scrapbook paper. This is going to be used to line the inside of the gun barrels and creates a stiff foundation for them. I cut enough for 4 barrels. I tape the paper to regular printer paper and then use a wooden dowel to roll them up. Once rolled, the paper gets taped together, and this process is done 4 times. This step does not necessarily require a specific color. I later discovered you can't even see the gold based on the barrel opening, but the stiff paper still helps initially. Now I want to cut some pieces of styrofoam to make up the bottom of the gun barrels. Matching the width of the top barrel, I cut a rectangle. Again, I make 4 of these. I have to shave the bottom corners of each one to match the shape. Next, I wrap the pieces in foam, gluing them down at the start and at the finish. To match that, I'm also going to wrap the round barrels in foam as well, wrapping it around a few times for thickness. This starts the barrel for each gun. The next step, I want to start painting the gems for each gun. I use acrylic gloss paint so that the reflectiveness of the gem is retained somewhat. I also trim away some of the barrels so that the opening is smoother. Finally, we glue the 2 barrel pieces together. As I did with Scarborough Fair, I print out an image of Love is Blue to use as a template. Printing on thicker paper is good to make a base shape. I measure where the barrels start at the back end of each gun and trim them. Note that the barrels for the shoe guns are shorter than the handguns. I even used the heels to measure. Now from the template, I cut away the barrels and leave the handle behind. This gets transferred to foam 12 times, 3 pieces per gun. These will be glued into layers. template is cut again to reveal another layer, and I cut 16 of these, 4 for each gun. Two are glued to each side of the existing handles. Third layer is cut away and the process is repeated. This piece is cut 8 times, 2 per gun. They are glued over the previous piece, 1 per side. A final layer is cut, the raised piece that holds the gem. This one is a ring with a few bumps. Each gun gets 2. One is glued on each side over the last piece. Once the handles were put together, I began adding the barrels. I used popsicle sticks to hold them in place as the handles were a bit flimsy without them. The sticks were a tight fit, but worked out either way. Now from the template, I take the bumped out piece of the handle and cut that out. This is then traced onto each gun twice, once per side. Model magic is then spread on, filling this area to make the grip. One side has to be done first, as the model magic is stuck to the guns initially before drying completely. After they've dried, they can be removed and the other side can be molded. Once both sets are dried, they can be glued on. Next comes the piece that covers the front to cover the layers of foam from the barrels. I press the foam into the barrel opening to get an imprint of the size of the opening. These are glued on over each gun. Each gun had to have its own made specially, as my guns weren't perfectly the same shape. Glue is applied to other regions for stability as well as shape. Now it's time to start the dangling trinkets. I used flat gems in the shape of each one, tracing a larger area around them onto foam. Then everything gets painted appropriately. Next, I cut the small diamond at the bottom of each dangling trinket. While those dry, I cut the pieces that go on the top and bottom of each gun and glue them appropriately. I cut these about 1 inch thick, each from foam board. After that, I glue the flat gems to their base. In between one side, however, I leave a strand of fishing line. One small and one large bead get attached to each side of the fishing line. I had to rely on some old wood beads painted gold, as the original ones I wanted to use were too heavy. Now I cut some small bits to extend past the top piece. Each gun gets 2. Next, it's time to get the guns primed up for painting. While drying, each gun's trinket gets its beads. The large beads go on the top, while the small beads go on the bottom, followed by the bottom-heavy diamonds. I did what I could to securely tie the fishing line in place. Now it's time for the blue paint. I painted the area of each gun where the blue would actually be visible. The grip and the gem insert get painted black. Now it's crunch time. In my hotel room, I finished up the guns entirely. I began by painting the remaining bits gold. I followed this with a second coat of black for the other details. Next comes gluing the gems down to each gun. I found that hot glue was better for this than E6000, as it did not spread like crazy when placed down. These pieces were cut to form the opening of each barrel. Each one is painted gold on both sides. Now begins the details. Before painting anything, I put down a design in permanent marker. The nozzle tips for the paint come quite in handy here. Before putting down the logo, I drew it for practice on a blank piece of paper. Then it occurs to me that I left my stencils at home, so I have to get creative. I used some of the dollar store tableware I bought to make the circular shapes for the moon designs. This part is not recommended, though it did work really great. From there, the remaining parts can be painted easily. Then the logo is painted. The top connecting bits are painted as well. Then this process is repeated 7 more times. After finishing one side of each gun, I glue in the opening pieces. This is why you can't see the original gold scrapbook paper. I now cut from foam and foam board some small pieces to make up the sight for each gun. 2 flat rectangles are glued together with the triangular piece on top, and then they're painted black. Using a thick needle, I poke a hole through the bottom extension where the trinkets hang from, and then thread the fishing line through that, tying it off at the end. The 2 handguns get sights glued on. With that, the guns are finished. These guns turned out better than I imagined for my skill level. They're light and sturdy, and clearly serve their purpose. Sadly, I did not get the shoe guns attached to the shoes correctly, but I'm looking into a process in the future that I hope will work. You can also see the difference in length from the handguns to the shoe guns. This concludes the Bayonetta 2 cosplay tutorials. I hope these have helped any of you out there looking to cosplay our favorite Umbra Witch. Just make sure to leave plenty of time for yourself, as mine got a bit rushed. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, stay whimsical.